All right, my friends. So today we're talking about how to save money on Airbnb bookings. Now, I have used this strategy. I started using this in the US, and I've learned that you can use this internationally as well. So this isn't just locked down to a specific area, but there could be a language barrier. So keep that in mind. But I have used this strategy for many, many years. It does work. You have to be selective about how you want to use it, at least my number one strategy. And I'm going to share that with you right now because I'm not going to let you wait till the end. I'm going to give you the best thing right up front. This is my number one tip on how to save money on Airbnbs. And that is, a lot of folks don't know that you can actually negotiate the rate that is listed on Airbnb. Even if it's discounted, you can negotiate that rate with the host. How does this work? So I tend to do this in two ways. When I was in the US and I was traveling a lot for business and I was going into a specific city, like I was going into Denver, I was going into Raleigh, I was going into Denver, I was going to a lot of places, and I would have to stay there for maybe, I'd get there for a week and I'd be there for, coming back about every 6 to 8 weeks. What I found is I found a couple bookings I really liked. 2 or 3 places in each of those cities I really enjoyed, and I built a small relationship with the host. So this tends to work the best after you've already stayed at a place once and you get a good recommendation, or at least a good review from the host, and you've given the host a good review. So you built that relationship. Then when I would travel back 6 or 8 weeks later, I'd see what was available. And if that unit was available, and I don't know why this happened, but every time I'd go to rebook, the price would often be more expensive than I originally paid per night. So I would just message the host before I'd book. And I just message the host and say, hey, I'm coming back. Can you give me the old rate? Can you give me the rate I paid before? And 9 times out of 10, the host has always agreed. They're like, yeah, we love having you there. We know our place is taken care of. You've been a great guest. So they will just basically do that, and they can actually do that on their end. One thing I found though is every once in a while a host isn't sure how to do that. And I do remember a few times that they didn't know. I wound up actually telling them, let me call customer service. And the customer service team at Airbnb, when I would speak to them, I would give them the price that I was wanting to negotiate. So let's say they were charging $50 a night, and I stayed there in the past, let's say, for $45 a night. There's only a $5 difference, but it adds up a little bit over a week or two time. So they would, and this being I contact Airbnb customer service if the host didn't know how to do this on their end, and the customer service would basically send a message with that negotiated rate to the host to verify that they would agree to it. And if they do, then you just finish your booking right there and you get that new rate. So I have found that works really, really well. But again, this is going in after. Now, if you're going in blind, you're thinking, well, this is going to help me. I'm going to a city for the first time. Here's another thing I do, especially when it comes to areas that have a lot of Airbnb. So if it's a neighborhood, let's say it's close to an amusement park and there's a bunch of properties around that all are competing for business, or if it's a resort or a building, and there's a lot of units in that building or in that neighborhood, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll find similar units, basically comps, just like you would in real estate. And if there were a lot available, let's say I wanted to go to a specific building and it had 6 or 8 units available for a 3-day weekend, all of them, available to book. I'd find the one I'd really like, and then I'd find what kind of the average price or kind of the low price is. I generally don't lowball too much. And I would come in and I'd message 1 or 2 of the hosts and say, hey, I really like your unit, but I would like it at this price because you're a little bit more than everybody else. And again, oftentimes for them to get the business, they would very quickly be like, yeah, I can do that. Hold on, I think something dropped away there. But yeah, they would just go ahead and jump in and take that offer, right? Otherwise, think about it, it would just sit empty. So that is my number one tip is, if you see something you really like, especially if you're going back and you're doing repeat business there, definitely talk to the host, or again, if you have to, bring Airbnb in, but I always reach out to the host first, and you can do that before you even book. There's an area there that says message host, and you can message the host directly and say, and you can ask them questions, and in those questions, I often like to negotiate rates sometimes. So that's my number one tip that I use to save money on Airbnbs. Now, another one to save money, and also kind of a tips to watch out for, and as you really need to read the listings, read them really well. Like for me, I needed parking in a lot of my Airbnbs I stayed in the second half going around here in Manila. One of the things I noticed is the host would have in there, they'd say, hey, before you book and you need parking, let us know. So that way they can reserve the spot for you. Because the host may have 4 or 5 units, but they may have limited parking. And unless you have already contacted them before you've booked, giving them the heads up that, hey, you're gonna need that parking spot. So you really wanna do that. Make sure you read the listings, see what the rules are, but also if there's anything you need to do before you make the booking. That's a really important one. And then another one to watch out for is extra fees on amenities. I've seen this in a lot of buildings where 2 things will come up. Number one, they say, okay, well, if you want to use the pool, it's X number of dollars or pesos, wherever you are traveling, pounds, Singapore dollars, wherever you're traveling to. Some places may actually charge extra to use, for guests there to use amenities. And it could just be a small amount, but again, if you're traveling with a family or something, that could add up fast. And also going through the headache of having to go to an office, get a pass, all that. So look for extra fees on amenities. And then the other one is access to amenities, specifically the pool or maybe like a terrace or something. Because I've noticed this, especially here in Manila, where on weekends they will limit who can access the pool. And typically if you're an Airbnb guest or something, they will always give priority to the owners and the people who have long-term leases and long-term rentals there. Because think about it, if you're renting a place for a year or so, or you're an owner of a property, do you really want to compete every time you go down to the pool with a bunch of guests coming in all the time? Buildings are starting to get smart about that. They realize they need to kind of throttle and find a good kind of middle ground there. I've seen some areas where they may have one pool available for guests, and then the rest of the amenities are, especially on weekends, are only for long-term residents and owners. So keep that in mind. That's something to kind of watch out for. Again, read the listings. Another one, and you hear this a lot, booking longer term is a good one, but here's a kicker on Airbnb you have to watch out for. And that is Airbnb weekly bookings are 7 days. So if you think, oh, I'll get a month, that's only 28 days, okay? That's the way they run the numbers. So it's usually, if you're gonna book a month, I found on Airbnbs, usually it's 7, so it's going to be a 28. So you're not going to book a 30 or 31 day month. Sometimes if you do that, the algorithm on Airbnb will give you the adjusted rate. But the best way to do it is block out 28 days, 4 weeks, 7, see what that price is, and then block out the month, because I've caught this before where 28 days will be a discounted price, and then if I do 31 days, right, it'll actually give me the full rate of those last 2 or 3 days there, right? That would just really kind of offset the cost. In a sense, it would seem almost more expensive. So make sure that you're looking at how that's done. If you're starting to do monthly bookings, make sure that there's some sort of maid service where they're going to come in on a weekly basis. Talk to the host about this. Say, hey, are you going to have a maid come in once a week? If I'm going to book 4 weeks, is the maid going to come in once a week? Otherwise, who's going to be cleaning the place, as you're staying there? And another one that could happen is utilities. If you're staying much longer, a lot of times once you start going over basically that month time frame, they being the host may actually have a cap on how much utilities that you can use, and it's smart. It kind of keeps them out of trouble. So there may be some limitations there in the booking. So make sure you're communicating that with the host. So if you are going to start basically doing that, where you're going to get, multiple months, right, it's best to get a short-term lease and maybe rent that way. Talk to the host about that, because that way then you can actually, do all utilities included, all amenities included, and have a small lease. And it could be really simple. It could be a 1 simple page lease. And again, another thing to protect the owners as well, as you'll see this usually, is there will be a cap on the utilities. So you can only use, $100 worth of electricity if you go over that, because that may be, let's say, the average for that property. If you go over that, you have to pay the difference. I've been in places where that has happened, and it's common because it protects the host, so you're not coming in there and killing their profit margin. So there you have it. Negotiate. All right, whether you've been staying there before or for the first time, if there's a lot of units, and then definitely read all the bookings, make sure there's no issues in there. Watch out for that 7 day versus a month issue. And then longer bookings, make sure that utilities are covered, there's no surprises there. And then cleaning, having maid service, that's a big one, especially if you're staying for multiple weeks. Always communicate that with them. Okay, my friends, like, subscribe. I hope this helped you, and I'll see you in the next video.